9, number 9, number 9, number 9, number...
This is episode number 9. Welcome back, everybody. This is the Four Hauntsmen. You're getting, at least we're doing a twofer taping here. We just got done talking about Halloween Horror Nights, but now we're going to talk a little bit about Howl-O-Scream. Busch Gardens competing Halloween event, only 90 minutes away from Orlando's own Halloween leading entertainment event. We're back this week with Drew.
Hello.
Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul.
Hey, everybody.
So we went to Tampa last week. 3/4 of the Four Hauntsmen arrived and did at least the first 15, 20 minutes of our night together.
No.
Two of us spent the entire night together.
Yeah.
Well, there was the night, but it wasn't the scare part of the night. All three of us did. We started the night with Howl-O-Scream's Fright Feast, which, for those that don't know, Fright Feast is it's a good value. I think it used to be a better value when there was a better show, but it is dinner, and the dinner has theoretically increased in quality year over year.
Yeah.
And you get 90 minutes of front-of-the-line access to all of the haunts in the park. So all three of us started that way, and then our groups were sizable, so we started to split off into more manageable groups, I think. But we had somewhat mixed experiences, or probably similar experiences, I don't know, because we really haven't talked to each other much about this since then.
Nobody had my experience, I guarantee you that.
But let's start at the very beginning. The new show at Howl-O-Scream for the dinner show, and I know that they have other shows besides dinner, is called Inside Your Mind with Joshua Seth. He is the mentalist.
I'll tell you one thing. He definitely didn't want to be inside my mind while the show was going on.
Oh, he didn't see that. He didn't see it coming. I think that so many people would get up and leave during the show.
Well, when the show starts like 10 minutes before you get the front of the line for 90 minutes, you gotta be real good to keep them to stay. I mean,
Yeah.
It used to be. What was it last year? 2 hours?
It was 90 minutes, but I think the show started earlier in the dinner event. I can even back up and say the dinner selections this year, it was not complete buffet style. They had kind of pre-made meals that you got to choose from. There were 4 different meals, like chicken fettuccine or chicken, some type of Alfredo dish, and
it seems like they kind of did it more like how Halloween Horror Nights as a scare actor.
Well, Halloween Horror Nights, you genuinely have a buffet. You can choose all the items that you want, and they have a carving station. This place, if you're like, hey, I'd like some of that Alfredo chicken, but I also want some steak, they're like, hey, well, just take 2 dinners then.
Yeah. It seemed very wasteful.
Yeah, it was weird. The show, not the greatest. Not the greatest.
You're not paying for the dinner or the show. I mean, with that front of the line, it's not just front of the line. You're cutting off people that have front of the line already. You show them the wristband, you go right to the front for that hour and a half. So it's really worth it. I mean, you can literally do every house, some of them twice, in that hour and a half.
We absolutely got our money's worth.
Yeah, I think it's still worthwhile for that piece, but without ripping the show too much more, it's definitely not something that I would spend time in seeing unless it's part of your dinner package. And even then, better use of time when your time is up or approaching the time for you to be able to hit houses, to go hit the houses.
Yeah.
So, and speaking of houses, let's go through them. We'll start with the 2 new ones first, although I realize everything is new to Drew.
Yes.
He has not been to the event before.
This is true.
But we're going to start with Demented Dimensions. This was their new house.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10 for you, really?
Okay, well, I would give it a 9 out of 10. I like that one a lot. I mean, a lot. So there's some parts of it that were kind of out of nowhere, like the whole Alice in Wonderland 8-bit thing. But
I think it was they kind of like put a lot together in one house. I felt.
Yeah.
I liked the house. I genuinely liked the house a lot. It's in the same spot as Zombie Mortuary, which was like my favorite house
last year.
to be able to, returning house. But so that's kind of a bummer. But it was fun going through that house. There's all kinds of stuff in there. The rat from years past is back in a different role in Demented Dimensions. And there's scares all over the place. They're up, they're down, they're around you, and I think everybody in our group got scared. What'd you think, Drew?
The only thing, as far as this house goes, so my first Howl-O-Scream experience was this house. So it was a lot to take in, and also like it was still daytime outside, so it was kind of hard to adjust my eyes, at least for the first couple of rooms. But I really liked it. I especially liked that room where like everything was like upside down, and like a freaking hand just came out of like a dresser that was upside. It was like crazy. Like I'm going through it, and I'm like, after that house, I was like, well, this is nothing like Halloween Horror Nights. Like they really. There's a lot of different tactics that they use at this event, and it was a promising setup for the rest of it. Is the way that
Yeah,
I liked it. I mean, if I was scoring it out of 5, I would probably give it like a 4.
Yeah, I think I would give it close to like 4.5. I think. The other new house this year, Undead Arena Live.
Not as good as the other one.
Look, you can't win them all.
This house took the spot where the 3D Clown House has been historically, and I think if I had my choice, I would, for as much as I joke around about 3D houses, I'd rather see that Clown House than the Undead Arena House. It's similar to Run, if you're familiar with the Run history from Halloween Horror Nights, but not quite as well executed. They separate your group as you go through the house, so you get into like a first room, and there's some people going in a lot. I think it was 3 different ways. There might have been 4 different ways to go, and quite honestly, like through the house, there were people behind like a fence in the house, and guys jumping out of the corners and stuff. I couldn't understand what the hell was going on the entire time. I
mean, it was literally just a less interactive version of like the zombie containment house. Is the way that I kind of looked at it.
Yeah,
it was mediocre at best.
We got to a room in that house where there's like a barker up on like a pedestal, I think, that's literally like trash talking people from the team, and the people from the team are talking back, and I'm like, what are we doing? Like, we're just standing still in this one area, and it wasn't like there was people in front of us. Because, by the way, the one thing to note about Howl-O-Scream, especially this year, more so than I've even seen in years past, is that I think every house that we went to, they pulsed you through it. So you went through with a very limited amount of people, and there, for the most part, there were no conga line type experiences. I thought that was great. That's a great thing to talk about.
Yeah, and me and Captain Tom got separated from the group with that whole moving wall thing that they were talking about. There was some poor child in front of us that was like literally crapping his pants in fear. But it was one of the things that they do in their houses a lot, and this house did it a ton, was like when you're going into a room, like there was people that just like they're against the wall, like right to your side as soon as you come in. And
a lot of the times, wear outfits that are like painted like the wall.
Yeah, and I always was terrified that I was going to bump into some poor person that's standing there as dressed as the wall. But no, I mean this house was like probably my least favorite of like the actual houses. Like we'll get to the. I'm sure we'll talk about the zombie containment unit, but that's not really a house.
Yeah.
So this was okay. I mean, it wasn't bad. We didn't wait very long for it. I wouldn't suggest waiting longer than like 10 minutes for it.
Yeah. There's a barker outside the house too that's apparently like placing odds on people's survival or something going. The whole house to me was like train wreck. I don't understand what the guy was talking about, and he told people in our party like, "Oh, it looks like you're prepared for this because you brought a backpack," or like stuff, and I'm like,
I got high odds because I had a Lily Munster shirt.
There's not much more to say about Undead Arena. It's like if you look at the spectrum of, Demented Dimensions is on one end and Undead Arena is on the other end, and then we could fill in the rest of the line chart here. Black Spot returned this year. Black Spot for us, and I don't know, Nathan, if you've had the same experience, but our front of the line access ran out by the time that we got to Black Spot, which to me is it's a bummer. So when we got there,
longest line.
we waited forever, and I knew what was coming because I was not a fan of this house last year.
I like it,
but we waited in that queue for like a good 50 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And can we also state that this is the most narrow set of switchbacks I've ever encountered in my entire life?
Yeah.
Let's not. Okay, I am a large man. I'm not a small guy, and neither are the members of our party that were there. And it was like we had to go sideways the entire time. It was not fun.
By the time that you hit that house, I think there's so many drink spots that you would have hit. Especially if you're looking to tank it up a bit.
Yeah.
And you're walking a good healthy distance by the time you get there. Everybody in that queue is looking at each other like they hate each other, and you're hating yourself for waiting in this narrow queue. I mean, it's got to be
at that point, everyone smells bad.
Yeah, well, also the house stinks too. But the house, literally, the house smells bad. But the queue is like maybe 18 inches or maybe 24 inches tops, like going across from the poles. It's definitely not an ADA compliant type queue. But I love the fact that you start that house off kind of outside, and then you're inside and you're outside. But my God, I'm not a fan of that house at all.
I liked it. I don't think it's the greatest thing ever, but I mean, come on, that one scare with the mirror, it's pretty cool.
The only thing that's memorable for me in that house, because I think the house that was there before, and I'm drawing a blank on what the name was, but the house that was there before was genuinely terrifying in some spots, and I thought it was a really good house, and it's disappointing that it was kind of replaced with Black Spot last year. And I feel the same way about like Undead Arena. Like you're replacing good stuff with bad stuff. If you're replacing things that are going up in value, then by all means. But Black Spot's not one of them. The only thing in that queue, that the skeleton that talks, he says something that is really, I'm sure it's not saying what I think it's saying, but it's very questionable at times. Like it's really.
They got him straight from Spirit Halloween. That guy.
It's almost like an anti-Semitic remark. It's unbelievable. But in any event,
I didn't hate the house though. I mean, I didn't love it, but I thought it was fine for what it is. I like the idea of a pirate-themed house, and I would love to see Halloween Horror Nights give like a proper take at something like that too. But it just wasn't very scary. It was more of like a cool house, but that was the last house that we did that night. We had done everything else. So the tone was set by the houses like that we're going to talk about that were pretty scary and awesome. So it didn't really live up to that of like the level of fear that we had in those kind of houses. But it was still like, it was enjoyable. I didn't hate it. It wasn't worth the wait that we waited for.
Yep. So I'm going to skip Zombie Containment Unit because it's not necessarily a house. It's more of a fun like little diversion game.
Yeah.
It's something that I think it's a great concept, but it's so packed all the time that the execution on it is very difficult.
It's a novelty,
you hit the nail on the head.
Did you say it's fun this year?
We had a good time.
Yeah, you could always have a little bit of fun with it. Yeah, I think that's the easy way to be able to get Black Spot in. And I would choose Black Spot over Zombie Containment Unit. I think.
Agreed.
But Deathwater Bayou returned again. The house is. I mean, it's awesome. It had a huge line, even at the end of the night when we went back to try to get in there for a second time. But the house is so good. It's so good. And Universal tried to do a similar type of house with Dead Waters this year, and I think it pales in comparison to Deathwater. So, Drew, impressions?
This house was my favorite of the event. I don't know if I want a 5 out of 5 it, but it's very close. You know, it's like a 4.75 out of 25. You know, and the fact that this house has been there for 5 years, it just seems kind of like before its time, almost, you know? Like, I wouldn't expect the quality of it from Busch Gardens. The one thing that seemed kind of out of place is that Vortex Tunnel. It really seemed like it should be part of it, but everything else was awesome, man. And the scares and the tactics they use there are amazing compared to Halloween Horror Nights and the stuff they do. And this was the house, right, that had the part where you walk under the coffin. Is that the one?
Yep.
Yeah, that is awesome. And of course, I mean, the bungee guys. That was probably, I mean, that literally like scared the crap out of me. You're off my life.
Yeah, the Bunchy guys are so good at what they do that I know when Mary went through, she could feel the guy breathing like on her. That's how close they get, you know. So
the only thing about the bungees, and like at Halloween Horror Nights, you know, Fallen has the flying guys, and it's one of the best things. But Howl-O-Scream really loves that bungee effect. They kind of overuse it a little bit, but it will still scare the crap out of you if you're not expecting.
Yeah. Nathan, how did you fare at Deathwater this year?
I liked it. I mean, last year I obviously got scared a lot more, but it's still very effective. Even if you know where everything is, the whole event as a whole. I mean, it's very, very close quarters. People screaming at you like within inches of you, especially like in Unearth. But I think that's where it gets me, scared a lot more than Universal with the conga line, because you don't really see a lot of it coming.
Yep. And yeah, keep in mind again, like you said, like there's pulsing taking place. Like you go through Deathwater and you got like your group, and
yeah,
there's a lot of tentative walking around that house, because it snakes pretty well. I really like that house a lot. Unearthed, it's back again this year, and I would say like the first year that they had Unearthed in Tampa, I loved it. Last year, I was like, it's pretty good. And then this year, I was like even more like, I've done that house a lot because we've had the opportunity to like, recycle as we go through the event, like after you're done with your houses. But this year, I didn't think it was as good as it was in prior years. It really focused more on like construction workers that were trapped in the house type of thing. I love what it was, and I know that it has capacity to be better than what it was this year, at least from somebody that's experienced it for a couple of years.
I thought it was a lot darker this year than last year. It's almost like pitch black in some rooms.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well, so for me, obviously, it was my first year experiencing the house. I really liked it. For me, this was like... This and Demented Dimensions were kind of like together for me. I think I like Demented Dimensions a little bit more. But I thought this was like one of the top-notch houses they had. I know it's different now that it doesn't really have like the theme of like, or like the story as you're heading in, but the whole like heading in through like the mine, like the, underneath was pretty awesome, and some of the scares, but like the effects are what really made it for me. Like this was the house too, I believe, right, with the walls that were like falling apart, like pulling apart from each other. And then the one thing that was hysterical was at the end with the construction equipment. There's like that little one thing with the the digger and everything. I was like, oh, there's totally gonna be someone inside of that thing. It was just like a girl sitting in there waiting to grab at people's feet. So they really go like 100% in some of these houses. But I liked it. I just it's funny because we went about 2 weeks ago now. And we only really got to do all these houses once. So I'm having a hard time recalling everything. And look, because like Nathan said, it's very dark in this house too. But I liked it. It was a good house.
Yeah, I'd like to get back.
It's like a solid 3.5.
So, Paul, if we have not put you to sleep yet.
I am awake.
Paul did not come with us this year to the Tampa Howl-O-Scream event, but he did go to the Howl-O-Scream event in Williamsburg.
Yes.
And this is one of the few houses that I think crosses over. And what did you think about your Unearthed this year?
So, full disclosure, I didn't even bother.
Okay.
I went for opening night, media night, and so I'm again, full disclosure, Media Night incorporated them showing us just the new stuff, right? So we got to see the new haunted house Frostbite. We got to go through the new scare zone, see the escape rooms, and then they kind of let us at our own pace for the rest of the night. They said, basically go do whatever you want. And I got to tell you guys, I really don't like the unearthed house at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. I love the idea. I love the fact that they brought in one of the co-creators of the Blair Witch Project to create the idea. But the way it's executed in Busch Gardens, Williamsburg is very different than it is in Tampa, in that it's inside of a ride, basically. They take a ride that's kind of like a Star Tours type ride. Or actually better equivalent would be like Soarin'. So they actually incorporate the giant TV or movie screen into part of the haunted house experience, and it just doesn't work well. It's I really want to like the unearthed house in Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, but the first year I didn't like it. The second year I liked it even less, and so this year when I went for opening night, I didn't even bother with it. I didn't want to deal with the wait, so it was a skip for me this year.
Yeah, I could see that. Although I think the first year that Unearthed happened with, was it Scarlet? Was the icon?
Scarlet's Revenge.
You guys had like a photo op with her, but we did not in Tampa.
Yeah, so they had Scarlet at the end of the house that you could take photos with, which was cool. I really like when theme parks give you that opportunity for these large events. If they have some type of icon, I really like when they do that. For example, when they had the Evil Encore, they had photo opportunities. Evil Encore being the puppet thing.
Yep.
They have photo opportunities with both the puppet creator, I don't recall his name, Mr. Carver, as well as Georgie the puppet.
Yeah, we have a photo thing that takes place in the house. There's a photo effect that like almost like a ride photo that they take your picture when you go through one section
in the closet.
of it. Yeah, and it flashed every person that went through. And when we went out, I was legit actually going to buy the pictures this time, but the guy even behind the counter was like, "Yeah, well, we don't have it set to take a picture every time. It just flashes every time. Like the camera's not fast enough to take a picture." I'm like, "Wow, like how many frames per second are your cameras that they're going so slow?" And so we got a picture with like, I think it might have been part of Drew and like half of Jess's face, which was not worth purchasing.
It's an old abandoned mind. The cameras just can't hold up. Yeah. Never break character.
And so for us, we're all the way up to our last house in the Tampa Howl-O-Scream, which is Motel Hell. It's my favorite house. Still, I think, between the parks, I really like going through the house. We were able to go through twice on the night that we went. The house has changed from last year. So basically, like, the first part of the house, like first half of it is the same. And it seems like they've kind of done away with like the other 50% of what the house was before and switched it up with different stuff. So we had some additional scares taking place from up above, or a guy that looked like he was like in like either a rock structure or towels or something else in like a room that reached up and like grabbed at us. The pool that they had in the house last year was now moved outside, so it actually kind of fit like, there's a pool outside. And, when you think the house is done and you're in that pool area, there's still scare actors running around. I mean, that house was intense with the amount of people that they've put in it. I still love that house to death.
I still don't get how there was a dentist in the hotel. But
yeah, that's bizarre. I guess we should talk about that. That's really bizarre.
5-star diamond.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what motels people are staying at that have dentists in them, but I guess I'll go with the flow.
The way that I looked at that house, like it was basically like if Cabana Bay met the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was kind of the way that I looked at it. I really liked it. It was awesome. There was that Jabberwocky's room in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's one more way. Like people look like they're coming out of the walls.
Yeah, dude. And one of the people in there scared the crap out of me. I was not expecting it at all. But it was good. I mean, the soundtrack for it, the Mr. Sandman was pretty awesome. The facade is fantastic, especially for, like, that was a Universal quality facade. I wasn't expecting You know that. But it was awesome, man. It was this house and Deathwater Bayou might be better than anything at Halloween Horror Nights this year.
Yeah. So, and that's a great point because people ask all the time, like, is Howl-O-Scream worth it? And what is it like? There's so many people that are just locked into Halloween Horror Nights because that's Orlando. And, people are not going to get in a car and drive 90 minutes to go somewhere else. But I'm telling you, it's worth the drive.
It is definitely worth it. You're doing yourself a disservice if you write it off.
Yeah.
I can understand when you're on vacation, sometimes it's hard to put aside the effort and the time and the money to go out of your way to go to an event like that. But if you're a local and you're a big fan, you've got about, 5 or 6 weeks to make it happen. As long as you can do it financially, it is absolutely worth the trip out. It's something that I'm going to try and do every year. But I can also understand not going every year if they repeat a lot of the same stuff. But it's definitely something that should be experienced.
Yep, I agree. Nathan, any other thoughts on the houses?
Did we literally go through all of them?
We did. 7 houses.
We just didn't talk about laser tag, but it was fun. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I had a good time.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. It's definitely scary. I'll give them that. It's scary.
Yeah. So, Paul, do you want to talk about the housing? The housing.
The housing market in Williamsburg is surprisingly
the differences in the Williamsburg event.
So the Williamsburg event here in Williamsburg, Virginia. Just a couple of clarifying points. Down in Tampa, your Busch Gardens is a separately ticketed event. So you basically buy tickets specifically for Howl-O-Scream, or if you have a daytime pass, you have to buy some type of upgrade for Howl-O-Scream in the evening. Busch Gardens Williamsburg is a little different, or I should say incredibly different, in that if you have an annual pass, if you have a day pass, whatever, it is good for the entirety of Howl-O-Scream. So you could basically show up at the park at 10 o'clock in the morning and not leave until the end of Howl-O-Scream that evening without paying extra money. It's not a separately ticketed event, which is great and bad, right? It has its benefits, which is cheaper. It also has its, bad things, which are that, you're ultimately not getting much new every year, right? And so this year, they actually have one new house and one new scare zone, which it kind of sounds like you guys did down there too. So there was one new house, and I shouldn't call it scare zone. They're called terror-tories. But the new house this year was Frostbite. We talked a little bit about this off mic, but on mic, it's very Game of Thrones inspired. I wouldn't necessarily call it a scary house. But what they did is they took their Curse of Dark Castle ride, which takes place in a castle, and they closed down the ride for the entirety of the season, incorporated a lot of the elements of that ride, which includes Curse of Dark Castle. If you've ever ridden Spider-Man at Universal Studios Islands of Adventure, it is the same exact ride. It is almost the exact same ride, just medieval themed instead of Spider-Man themed. I think it's designed by the same designers and everything. It is a copy of that ride. It was intentional. So if you can imagine them shutting down that Spider-Man ride and having you basically walk through it, that's kind of what this is. You're walking kind of near where the track would be, and they incorporate a lot of the elements of the ride, as well as they have an intro video that was filmed specifically for the ride, which I thought was kind of cool. That features kind of the Frost King or the Ice King or whatever he is. Kind of threatening you, and they have dragon skeletons and things like that. I will say it's a very long house. Lots of stuff going on that house because it's the length of a ride. I mean, they pretty much have it the entire length of the ride, which you're walking instead of riding in a car. So not particularly scary, but very interesting, very cool. I would be surprised if it returned because, it seems like a lot of effort to close down the ride and then convert it. What I thought was interesting is they closed down one of the previous houses, a vampire house that had been there for like 8 years or something. And, they closed that house and replaced it with Frostbite. But the location that the vampire house was in is still there. And as far as I know, not going anywhere. So I don't know why they didn't just have an extra house this year. It seemed like nothing's really being done with that building. Maybe they're doing something inside of it, but like you literally walk by the house where the vampire house would be normally. So I thought that was interesting. As far as the new territory, it's called Axe Alley. It's themed to Vikings, very much in line with the new roller coaster Invader, which is a Viking themed. I wouldn't necessarily call them Ghost Vikings or zombie Vikings or anything like that. It's pretty much just Vikings. Lots of props and things like that for that scare zone. It works in line with the new roller coaster. They've got a couple of escape rooms this year. Those are an upcharge event, but I really thought they were cool. If you've never done an escape room before, these are a little bit different in that it's a half-hour experience, and there is a scare actor in the experience with you. So I know you guys had the Evil Encore puppet theme last year at your Howl-O-Scream. We did too, but the only way to really experience it was to do this escape room where Mr. Carver and his puppets, and you were trying to escape his workshop, is part of the experience. And so it's I think you go in groups of, I don't know. When I did it, it was only a group of 4. I'm assuming you probably can't have more than 4 or 6 in these things at one time. So it is a very personalized experience, haunt experience. And I really think if you've not experienced something like it, it's worth checking out. So other than that, everything else is returning from last year. Like I mentioned earlier, I did check out a couple of the other houses, a couple of returning houses that have changed a bit. There's one called Lumber Hack that's an outdoor sawmill type house, but it is entirely outdoors.
Sounds like a B movie.
It really, it feels like a B movie too. There's one called Cornered, which is a cornfield scarecrow themed maze, which doesn't really work as far as scares in the daytime because the sun was still out, but I will give it this. You genuinely have to duck under a lot of stuff in that house. So, sometimes there are things that you kind of shove around your head or things hanging from the ceiling. Like I actually had to duck under some stuff in that house, which is a bit of a different experience. You're not just walking through, you're actually interacting and moving aside corn stalks and things like that. So I thought that was cool. And I went on. I also went through last year's new house, Circo Sinistro, which is their new circus-themed house, which is fantastic. I mean, it is a great house. The only thing I will say is that if you're attending Busch Gardens Williamsburg, if that house is almost worth getting the express for alone, because that house and now Frostbite, I should say, are both situations where they queue everyone up, like queue large groups of people in one room to start it. So like I mentioned, Frostbite has an intro video. Like they get a whole bunch of people into a room, you watch the intro video, and then you get to walk through the house. So it like basically they take a big lump in and the line stops. And then they, for the people to watch the video, and then they take another lump in and the line stops. And so the lines move very slowly on those two. So just be warned on that. But if you have a season pass, or even if you don't, if you're just interested in it, it's a great value. It is a super great value. I think Busch Gardens Williamsburg is probably about $70 for a day pass. Don't quote me on that. Somewhere between $70 and $75 for a day pass. But again, it includes the daytime, all the rides, and the nighttime Howl-O-Scream event, all in one pass. Yeah, so pretty cool.
It's always so interesting that the events are so different between the two parks.
Yeah, it is.
You'd think that there would be more synergy in kind of doing the same things, one design team and just rolling it out multiple places. But
well, I think too you deal with, Tampa deals with a lot more competition. They need more eyes, whereas, in Williamsburg there's not really much. There's no Universal there for them to compete with,
Yeah, I think that's the thing. They're the only game in town. And, there's about an hour away King's Dominion from it. And, yeah, it's a similarly themed or similarly sized event, I should say. But neither of them, and forgive me for saying this, because I enjoy both of them. So if anyone is listening who's a fan of those events, neither one is going to win the best theme park haunted attraction award, from whatever magazines give those awards out. They're fun events, but they certainly don't have the budget or the scale of Universal Studios or any of those other events. They're just fun events with kids who are, there's no such thing as, you don't have an audio track that people jump out and open their mouth and the audio track screams for them. No, these are all actors who are screaming at you, probably hoarse by the end of the night, giving it their all. And so I appreciate that for what it is. It's a ton of fun.
Awesome. So bringing it back to Tampa, I'm going to touch on one thing that's similar to both parks again. We both have the Fiend show.
Oh.
Drew had his first taste of Fiends this year. Nathan skipped it altogether. I liked it. We still haven't compared notes. Did you go to the Fiend show, Paul?
This year, no, I did not.
Oh, okay. So I'm just curious if it was the same Fiend show.
It's the I've seen your video of it, and I don't know if yours has changed. It doesn't change year over year, like, for example, Bill and Ted. It's a song and dance show. It's naughty nurses, things like that. And but I did not see the show because it generally doesn't change year over year. It's just kind of a fun, dirty show.
Yeah, the storyline changes, at least for us, and some of the songs change. But I liked it. It is, is what it is. I didn't think it was as good as it was last year. Last year had more of an election theme. Although I will say, the storyline from this year connected to last year, which was interesting. So it was kind of like, if you've gone year over year, the story continues.
I thought it was awful.
Drew walked out and was like, nope.
If I wasn't sitting in the middle of the row, I probably just would have walked out midway through because I had to go to the bathroom really bad. It was not great. Yeah. I never want to hear anyone complain about Bill and Ted ever again after watching that show.
Yeah, although I'm sure it's probably a fraction of the budget too. But
well, it's true, but you know what I mean. It's basically like you're going to compare the two because they're similar, in a way. But yeah, no, it wasn't good, guys. It wasn't good.
Yeah, and I would also take the naughty nurses over the dancers at Bill and Ted any day too.
I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't know. I will agree. I will agree with that point.
So I'm going to move on to scare zones. And, here's one thing to consider about Tampa's version of Howl-O-Scream. While there are 5 scare zones, you don't need a scare zone. I mean, I don't even know, why we name some of these things scare zones. I get it. There's some of these things are kind of themed, but there's just actors everywhere.
The whole park is a scare zone, dude. I don't even know which ones were the set ones now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, the people are everywhere. And, you get to these dark paths after a while, and it's just like, God, where, I know that there's got to be a Manus Busch in here somewhere.
I was walking in the middle of the path everywhere I went just to stay away from potential Manus Busch scares.
Yeah. Nathan, what'd you think?
Of the scare zones?
Yeah.
I liked them. I mean, I went through the schools out during the daytime, so there was nothing going on. So I missed that, but I saw, what was it? The one that was like Mad Max. I saw the one with like everyone on stilts. The one scare zone, I don't even know if it's a scare zone. I don't even know if she worked there. But when you're coming off of like the motel and Unearth, and you're kind of making your way back to the front of the park. They had like this old lady, with a walker.
Yep.
And she's kind of just chilling there, and she's looking at me, and I'm like, oh. And then you kind of do a double take, and then she starts like running at you, saying lunchtime or something like.
Then there was. And then I look. The little old lady in the wheelchair with the little chainsaw.
Yeah, there was a lady in a legit wheelchair with the tiny tiny wheelchair with the tiny
tiny little chainsaw,
tiny
dude.
chainsaw.
That was the best one too, dude. I was gonna say the exact same thing.
I was like, what the hell's going on? I see the little, the bus crashed. I'm like, this makes no sense, but I was not expecting any of them.
That was the best part.
You literally had to stop and think about it, like, oh, yeah, okay.
That's not a set zone. That's like one more pack of people out of there, just kind of like the crazy, inhabitants of the zone.
That was amazing.
The circus I went through, that was all right. That Wasteland one though, that one was really cool.
Yeah, that's cool. And then the meat market one is this
Yeah.
year.
Oh yeah, I
So-
jumped a few times.
For you to be able to get to Undead Arena, you have to go through Meat Market, and the characters were pretty awesome in that zone. There were a couple of little Easter eggs there too. If you've gone to the event over time, like they had some throwbacks to Zombie Mortuary in one of the sections there with the caskets. Like a number or pamphlet to call for casket creation, and was the home there. I picked up on that stuff, but they have games in the area, but they have actors like mingling around everybody, and you're so caught up in like your own stuff going around that you don't know like when people are going to jump out at you. And the meat market I thought was really effective. I liked it a lot. Wasteland I liked a lot also. Like you said, it's kind of like that Mad Max-ish type theme. That was a returning zone this year. There's, I think it's Wasteland, where there's a bungee scare
Yes.
in the zone.
Yep.
Like in between the trees, the guy flew out at us.
It was pretty intense.
Yeah. I mean, so you get the opposite of Halloween Horror Nights with people not trying to scare you and taking selfies. Like, there's nobody stopping to take selfies with these people.
That was my biggest takeaway from scare zones at Howl-O-Scream as compared to Halloween Horror Nights. The term scare zone is used very, very loosely at Horror Nights, whereas it is quite literally a scare zone at Busch Gardens. The only one that I wasn't a huge fan of was the circus one, the clowns. But other than that, I mean, they were all pretty awesome in their own unique way. And then there was another one too. I mean, it wasn't a set scare zone, but that part, it was by, I think it was by the theater, where there was like that giant like werewolf guy.
Yeah.
They were all
humpback
stilts.
werewolf.
Yeah, dude. There was some interesting characters there, and then but yeah, I'm with Nathan, dude. I love the part with the little bus with all the old people. That was amazing.
Yeah, and some of them are not necessarily only scary; they're genuinely creepy. So
that's what it was.
Yeah, they introduced Class Deceased this year, which is where students have killed their headmaster. I mean, and the students all look like they kind of look like they were in blackface, but it looked like they were like burnt or crispy or something. But that was a little weird. But
Chainsaw Pandas.
Yeah, I mean that. Well, yeah, I'll get to that in a second. But the kids were creepy. There were people playing with dolls on the floor and stuff, and Playground was back this year, and that kind of links right into the Class Deceased, and that's super creepy also with the little spinning thing from the playground.
Yeah,
it's super creepy, and there's a lot of scares happening. But then, yeah, I mean, I don't know where to even go. Like when you even mentioned like the panda chainsaw. I mean, and there was that one guy that was dressed in this ridiculously huge like bear costume in the zone that's like covered in blood. And that's the other thing. Like these houses are loaded with blood and poop and like smells and stuff like that. It is the exact opposite of going to like Horror Nights where they're playing it safe. And like the characters that are out there, whether they're skating and they slide with like the metal to make sparks and stuff.
Those were awesome too. I forgot about them. And then, I mean, one other thing too that we forgot about too, the zombie bumper cars. There's just so much.
Oh yeah.
So many cool little things at Busch Gardens that make the event as a whole just really work. Yeah.
It wasn't only zombie bumper cars this year, because I know Nathan spent time while we were kind of holed up in Fiends. Nathan was riding roller coasters with zombies.
Yeah, I went on. Once I saw the lines for the mazes and the fact that I've already done most of them last year, and somebody was pissing me off, I decided to break away and then just go on roller coasters the rest of the night. So I literally went on Cheetah, Shikra, everything but one. But for the most part, they had people or scare actors kind of mixing in with everyone else on the roller coaster. And one of the times I went on Cheetah, I actually had one next to me, and she was creepy. She didn't do anything until one of the launches where the camera was, and then she kind of just like snarled and like reached out to grab me for the picture, and I was like, oh shit. So
yeah, it's a different event. So Paul, how are things in Williamsburg with scare zones?
So, I mentioned Axe Alley as the new scare zone. The scare zones, so I wouldn't say there are quite as many actors. It sounds like you guys have actors all over the place. And I would say Busch Gardens Williamsburg has decorations all over the place, even in not necessarily mandated terror-tories / scare zone areas. They've got an area of the park that has hundreds of pumpkins in the trees, not necessarily, not dissimilar to the Trick or Treat scare zone at Halloween Horror Nights, but on actually a much larger scale. The Ireland area has been decorated, kind of leading into the whole freak show with Dr. Frankenstein's experiments and things like that. But at least on the night I went, the actors, the scare actors are specific to the 5 scare zones. So you have Axe Alley, which I mentioned. You've got a Carnival, which is themed to the Circo Sinistro house. You've got Demon Street, which is really one of my favorite scare zones. It's kind of like these demon characters that go around the streets of France, and they kind of do all these fiery effects on the top of the building, so it looks like everything's on fire. You've just got they're fun scare zones. They revamped all of them a couple of years back. They kind of revitalized them, kind of freshened it up a little bit. So some of these are now going on their 4th or 5th year as far as returning. So I would imagine they're probably going to be cycled out over these next couple of years.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to going back. I wish, well, we'll have to see how October goes. I'd like to get back to Howl-O-Scream again this year. I think it's that good.
I wouldn't be opposed to it. I don't know if I'm going to spend the money on it again. I wish I would have bought the pass if that was the case, but it's definitely worth multiple visits if you're able to.
Yep. So I think that just about wraps everything up for Howl-O-Scream. But again, if you are coming to Orlando, thinking about going to haunts, I mean, certainly Howl-O-Scream should be considered in the same capacity as Halloween Horror Nights. I know, again, people are stuck with that stigma of, like, I got to drive to be able to get there. It's worth the drive. Make a weekend out of it. There's plenty of local haunts along the way in between Halloween Horror Nights and Howl-O-Scream itself. So there's lots to do, but I would definitely say Howl-O-Scream on an annual basis should be a destination for anybody that's into horror and Halloween-based activities.
Well, and if you're not checking out Williamsburg because you assume it's the same event as Tampa, it is most definitely different. It's not on the scale as Tampa because it doesn't necessarily have the competition, but it is worth checking out. And like I said, about an hour away from King's Dominion, which is about the same size. So you have 2 very significant size theme park haunt events within about an hour of each other here in Virginia as well.
And there you have it. So, wrapping things up, anybody have plugs? Paul?
Other than letting you guys know that Cult of Chucky, if you're a Chucky fan, is out on Netflix right now, and I plan to watch it.
Oh, is it really on Netflix?
Not tonight, but soon. It is on Netflix. Now, the R-rated version is on Netflix. The unrated version is what was released on Blu-ray, but the R-rated version is on Netflix right now. So if you have Netflix, you can actually see Chucky the same day as it's released on DVD.
Yeah, I actually was just at Walmart earlier and was considering purchasing it, so I'm glad I saved the $15.
Yeah, I'm going to watch it someday.
Yeah, but now you get the extra F-bomb.
All right, I'll plug Drew's T-Public store.
It's like a broken record at this point.
Yeah, I don't think there's no Howl-O-Scream based shirts.
No, not yet. I don't have anything that good for Howl-O-Scream.
Which, by the way, if you're looking at merch, there's a million times more shirts and merch at Howl-O-Scream than there is at Halloween.
Better.
Nights.
Yeah, it's better designs too, for sure.
So I don't have any plugs. If you're interested in seeing an event overview of Howl-O-Scream for Tampa, by all means, check out View from the Cheap Seats video of the event. And if you're looking for the Williamsburg companion video, check out IOM Geek for that content as well. And on that note, I think thanks for for listening.
Yeah, thanks for checking us out for 9 episodes. We will see you guys next time.
On 10. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.
Later.